Hi there, I'm Janice Borla. It's my pleasure to be on Gail Boyd's show this afternoon, and I want to thank Gail for the opportunity to join you today. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a jazz vocalist based here in Chicago. As such, I've been performing and recording for 36 years. And I would invite you certainly to visit my website. You'll find bio information, all my recordings, several videos, a photo gallery, all kinds of goodies. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. Well, Gail gave me several suggested topics that I could talk about. And hi, Alexis. I see you tuned in. And so I'm going to do my best to get some of this stuff done in 30 minutes, and we'll see where we go. And so I hope you'll forgive me for having notes. I wasn't about to do this totally free. Uh-oh. I just did something with my mouse and I lost the picture.
You're here. We see you.
Okay. Maybe this is better. Okay. Well, I'm going to start with my journey into jazz. I grew up in the 1950s. I was a child in the 50s. And at that point, I was aware of Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald. I remember a couple of TV programs that were very popular in that day. Nat Cole had a show that he hosted, Frank Sinatra. They were very popular, but more importantly, they were important showcases for other notable jazz musicians. And I specifically remember a moment when I was 10. It was the summertime, and the radio was on, and I heard Nat Cole sing one of his hits. And I remember stopping right where I was and thinking to myself, wow, he's an amazing singer. And I don't think I'd ever thought about singers up until that point. And I think that had a very, very lasting impression on me that I carried for many years after that. My musical training began on accordion. And this is something I was not willing to talk about for many years. But I now realize that it's probably the most crucial part of my musical training and very, very valuable for who I am today. Let me give you some context. Chicago in the 50s was like the accordion capital of the world. I attended a school that had 3 branches in the Chicago area. It had hundreds of students. It had a bunch of teachers. It had orchestras of all levels at every branch. And it even had a professional orchestra that was composed of all the teachers and proteges of the school. And that was my goal, to get into that band. And I did eventually. And Chicago, I think, had that reputation, or had that status, because of all of the large number of Polish and Italian immigrants that lived in the Chicago area at that time. I'm Polish, and my father was an amateur accordionist. So it was really no surprise that he was going to steer me into the accordion. I mean, we even had there was something like there was the the Chicago Music Festival, which was held at Soldier Field. And it brought in accordion bands from all over the world. Well, my point being, the 2 things that happened in that regard. One, my teacher was brilliant. And he was a DePaul grad who gave me a very, very, very solid foundation in harmony. I remember about 3 years of my life doing nothing with him but writing and playing scales and arpeggios. And the instrument itself is extraordinary as an instrument to learn harmony on, because not only do you have the keyboard on the right hand, but you have the buttons on the left hand that are situated arranged in the circle of fifths. So a beautiful way of understanding and internalizing how harmony works. And it didn't mean much to me at the time, but now that I'm an improvising musician, it's gold. The fact that I was so comfortable at getting into improvisation, simply because the harmonic formulas that we use, I had totally integrated or totally internalized as a kid. I also had classical vocal training in high school and college and graduate school, but only classical. So in my 20s, I returned home from school and began working in Chicago as a singer. And that meant typically being a singer with a trio in a supper club. I did some jingles, and one thing led to another, and eventually gigs got better. I worked some with the Ralph Martiri Orchestra. It was based here in Chicago, a very high-profile big band. And I did about 6 years' work with Playboy at that time. Now, Playboy, had a long reputation for being very jazz-friendly. Their music policy always put jazz musicians in their rooms. And so I functioned as a jazz singer, both in their small rooms here in Chicago and in Lake Geneva, the resort there. But I also did work with them in their showrooms with the big band doing shows. And so it was a really wonderful period of time. I enjoyed working for them very, very much. And that went on, let's see, in my early 30s, I met Jack Mouse. Now, Jack would become my husband. He's been my husband for 36 years. He had at that point, recently settled in Chicago, and I met him on a gig. And I remember distinctly that after the first tune I sang, I turned around to look who the heck was on the drum throne, because our time feel locked in so profoundly. Yeah, I had never had felt anything like that. And so, needless to say, we melded, and Jack has become my was at that time my jazz mentor. He was the one who really guided me into jazz as an instrumental genre. He encouraged me to look at the repertoire, the instrumental repertoire, gave me guidance about what to listen to, how to listen to it. He was really very important in my transition from what I was doing before into really, honest to gosh, jazz singing. About a year or two after we met, we produced my first CD, Whatever We Imagine, which was released on the Seabreeze label. And I mention it here only because it gave me my first really, 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 really great review. Leonard Feather gave it 5 stars in the LA Times. And it led to my first appearance at the Chicago Jazz Festival in 1987. And since then, I've had the great pleasure to work with such wonderful players as Clark Terry, Bunky Green, Bobby Shue, Terry Gibbs, Jack Peterson, Charlie Hayden, Dan Hurley, Willie Pickens, Fareed Haq, Steve Rodby, and most recently, Blue Lou Marini. Jack also triggered the start of my college teaching career. It really happened because I was invited along with him to start or to build a jazz program at one of our local colleges here in the area from the ground up. And it was an amazing opportunity, but more importantly, I realized very quickly that I love teaching. I turned out to be good at it. And I also realized that it was going to be an integral component of my musical growth from that point onward. The real game changer about a year into this was that I was asked to put together and deliver a jazz history course for our majors. And I was starting from ground zero. So after a lot of intense reading and listening and research and all of that, I put the course together. But boy, did I learn vividly about the nature of the music, which is that it is an instrumental genre, and that vocalists historically played a fairly marginal role, other than Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. The innovators of the art were all instrumentalists. And And also the fact that improvisation was central to it, was at the heart of the matter. So this determined my direction. I decided, or if you will, yes, decided at some point to become a jazz musician, not a singer, but a jazz musician. And now I really have come to consider myself a musician who uses my voice as my instrument. I laughingly always say I'm an instrumentalist trapped in a singer's body. But it means I want to be embedded in the texture as a horn player would be. And I want to take solos just like a horn player would. And I rather love singing lyricless tunes, and I don't miss them at all. And so I think I've found my bliss musically, and I will continue on that path. It's been very, very gratifying for me in that regard. I think the most gratifying endeavor of my career was the vocal jazz camp that I ran for 26 years. It was a jazz camp and concert series. It was the first camp in the world designed specifically for solo vocal. Participants ranged anywhere from high school to college to adult, from beginner to advanced, and over 26 years, we ended up drawing students from all over the world. It was really a wonderful event. And what I loved about it more than anything was that when I brought other faculty in who were professional vocalists active at the time, and this gave me an opportunity to perform in concert with other singers, which how rare is that? I mean, singers don't get to sing with each other very much. Instrumentalists do, but singers not so much. And so I had a ball singing with the likes of Sheila Jordan, Jake Clayton, Judy Niemek, Rosanna Vitro. Oh my God, the list goes on. And I think I learned a lot from them. I very much admired what they were doing, and it was always a mutual love thing with all of us. It was very, very, very happy situation. I was also the focus or the subject of numerous feature articles, magazine articles, TV, radio. The most notable was that in 2003, the News Hour with Jim Lehrer on nationally televised PBS News show came out, sent out a film crew, spent a week with us, and they put together a wonderful segment that they aired later in the year for us. So, my mission as an educator let's say my objectives for the camp then have not changed. They're still my teaching approach now, and it really is that vocalists need to study and prepare themselves and practice, put the time in the way any other instrumentalist does, and to do the kinds of things that they do, to be acquainted with the jazz history and the innovators, the instrumental innovators, as well as the vocalists, to train the ear to be conversant in jazz harmony and with all of its alterations and extensions and whatnot. To learn the protocols of jazz performance, how to communicate with the rhythm section, how to cue things, how to shape a tune on the spot. And I'm a really big fan of transcribing instrumental solos, not just for the melodic and rhythmic ideas, but for all the other stuff, for the articulation, for the phrasing, for the any nuance, and in the process of transcribing and singing a horn solo, for instance, the singer is able to find their way directly to scat syllables. That's the big takeaway is that you find your own sounds by imitating that horn player. And eventually it becomes part of your vocabulary as an improviser. So, Dan Hurley used to say, transcribing a Miles Davis solo is like taking a lesson with Miles. What's that worth? And by the way, why not vocal solos? Well, I think, just be honest with you, they're the middleman. they're already expressing their influence of a horn player or whatever. Why not go to the source? And I suggest horn solos for singers because we both use air. And so there's a lot of common ground in how we come at music, single line instrument and so forth. Okay, let's go on to current projects. Well, I'll tell you what, we have a lot of plates in the air these days. With the pandemic, we had a lot of time to think about the next steps. We have performances in the fall we're working on. Jack and I were invited to come into Emporia State University in the fall for their jazz gala as guest artists with their big band and their faculty group. And we're in the process of booking some things around that. I'm working on a new CD. Well, I shouldn't say working on a new CD. I'm just really at the beginning stages of a new CD. We're kicking around material and personnel and so forth. So that may be something that comes down the pike next year. More recently, or closer to us, another project I'm involved in is a trio called Three Story Sandbox. And this is a free improvisation trio made up of Jack and I and multi-instrumentalist Scott Robinson. Sorry, Jack was just giving me a heads up on my time. In 2016, we released an album of free improvisation music, and it did very well. It was Downbeat's editor's pick for February of that year. So in April, we're going to try again. We're going to record a new CD, but this time we're going to bring in as guest artist the virtuoso violinist Mark Feldman, who's best known or well known with for his work with John Abercrombie. So we're looking forward to that. That should be a ball. We're going to do a CD and also a concert workshop at North Central College here in Naperville. Another thing we have going on, in 2015, Jack and I established a not-for-profit organization called Flashpoint Creative Arts. And Flashpoint's mission is to promote the appreciation of improvisation as an essential skill. There, I've said it. I think it comes from the impact that I have realized improvisation has had on my life, not just as a musician, but in other areas of my life. And I've seen it in my students as well. And so I've become kind of, I've found religion about the fact that improvisation is so valuable to us in the way it enables us to learn how to think out of the box, to think in the moment, to experiment, to not be afraid to fail, to collaborate. And, ultimately it gives you great confidence in yourself because you feel like you can handle things that are unexpected, that are, thrown at you without notice. So under the aegis of Flashpoint, Jack and I have presented or are presenting vocal improvisation workshops for various groups of all kinds. And our work has taken an interesting turn. We are doing a lot of work with special needs people. We are working regularly with Little Friends is an organization here in Naperville that is a school for kids with autism, I think K through 12. And we've been going over there twice a month to work with a couple of their groups of students. And it's been amazing to watch students, young people who may not even be, are nonverbal, be able to express themselves so much more, with much more freedom, singing. And really, we're not teaching, it's not about how well you're singing or singing right or wrong. There's no right or wrong, right? It's just the process of engaging with them with vocal improv. So I sing them, they sing back. And I teach them, simple things I can about the blues and a little bit about, some ideas, riffs, and they love it. It's been really, really a wonderful part of our work. In fact, whenever we go out on tour, we always make available the option of presenting. 2 years ago, we were out in Emporia Jack's from Emporia, if I keep mentioning Emporia, so it's a very user-friendly place for us professionally. And we did a concert there a couple of years ago before COVID, and a few days after the concert, we did a day of workshops. We literally, special education person in the area managed to organize 7 groups to come in on one day, every hour on the hour, and we worked with them on stage, passing the microphone. So we worked with drum sounds, and then we worked with vocal sounds, and sometimes they would get that they could trade with me, and other times they would just repeat what I sang. But hey, whatever. That they all had a wonderful time. It was very engaging, and it's like really a wonderful part of our lives now. I'm very happy that we found that niche, and I will continue to proceed with that. Finally, we have a new event that we're incubating. We actually figured it'd be up by now, but with COVID hitting, it has really delayed the whole progress of getting there. But we're hoping to nonetheless launch this possibly in 2023, 2024. In any case, we're going to be celebrating a collaboration across genres. So we envision a couple of nightly concerts that will feature 3-story Sandbox, freely improvising, but interacting with arts practitioners in other genres. So far we have Kirpal Gordon lined up, who is a very talented jazz poet. We met in Fort Bragg, California years ago at the Women in Jazz Festival. And Kirpal improvises poetry as we play music. Another artist we have lined up is a Japanese calligrapher that we met through Scott Robinson, who does her calligraphy paintings, gorgeous things, to music. So while we're improvising music, she paints. We're still working on some dance element, whether a single person or dance troupe, we're not sure yet. So, it's still in the planning stages, but we're really committed to getting this thing up and running. It will have not only performances, of course, but some daytime workshops during the day that will involve, or that will give us a chance to involve emerging young artists to be able to engage more directly with the artists they see on stage. So that's kind of what's going on there. I'm looking at my clock and seeing how much more time we have. One of the other things was advice from an older musician. I know when Jack was on your show, he had all sorts of stories of that nature, and I'm always envious because, as I thought, well, I don't know. Apart from him, I didn't really have, many mentors as such. But if I can expand that to include affirmation or encouragement, then yes, a couple, 3 people who have been really, I think, really important to me in that regard. Clark Terry. I had an encounter with Clark Terry years ago, but I sang at his camp, and then after that was on the same bill as he at a jazz festival in Oklahoma, and after our set, Clark surprised me by coming on stage and wanting to sing with me. Well, I was dumbfounded, I guess, and was happy as a clam to do it. But of course, there was the issue of what we were going to sing and whether I was going to scat sing or not with him. Well, we got through it and it went well, but I walked out of there going, okay, I get it. I have to know about the instrumental material and I have to be able to improvise. So he was, and every time we ran into Clark, he was very encouraging about my work and the direction I was taking. So I felt very, what's the word I need? Very happy to have his praise. And of course, Dan Hurley, pianist Dan Hurley and trumpeter Floyd Standifer. These are 2 folks that were actually part of the camp faculty throughout its history. I wouldn't really do the camp without either one of them. And their encouragement and support in the context of that project But also, Dan recorded a few albums with me as well. And so, he's amazing pianist, and really appreciate his enthusiasm for my work. But the best advice I ever got from a jazz musician was from saxophonist Rich Fedoli, who, while he was in Chicago, was considered one of the spiritual leaders of the Chicago jazz scene. And Richie and I were on a gig together, and it was something where, the audience was sort of indifferent to the music, one of those situations. And it kind of frustrated me, and I must have bemoaned the fact on a break. And Richie looked at me and said, "Always do your best work. Never underestimate the impact of your performance. Who knows, if there's just one person in that audience who you touch or you impact or you affect in some positive way, it's amazing that happened. So always do good work." And that's been my motto ever since. I think I have just a few more minutes. So advice to young musicians. Well, I spent several years, I'm still, in other words, I'm still engaged as a judge for the Downbeat Student Music Awards every year. And I judge the high school vocalists categories. And even though they're coming out of, they're getting guidance in their high school programs, a lot of times the submissions still lack what I'm looking for, which is demonstrating demonstrating an awareness of the instrumental style. How things I talked about before, how to sync with the rhythm section so that you feel swing, that you really express swing vividly, how to properly use appropriate scat syllables, how to build a solo. And this is, nothing that listening to instrumental jazz can't fix. My advice to young musicians is seek a musical mentor whose playing you admire and teaching style suits your needs. Make your own musical career opportunities. Be resourceful. It's a people business, so network. Be the kind of musician that's a pleasure to work with. A pleasure because you are polite, because you know how to deal with people, because you are well prepared. Your musical talent is important, but if you don't have those other business skills, I guess that's what we want to say is, it's like any other business. Whatever carries you in another profession would work here as well. It's very, very important to be professional. And lastly, be kind when you encounter. I have a couple minutes, so I will either tap dance or see what else I want to talk about. Oh, see, I have no screen, so I'm going to. Oh my goodness, I'm looking at Jack's and seeing the comments. Hang on, I've got the wrong. I need a mouse. Thank you. Oh dear. Anybody I need to? Marvin Parks. I did the Janice Borla. Oh my God, in 2000. I remember you, Marvin. How is Jack? Oh, he's as crusty as ever. He's the most irascible character on God's earth, but I love him. Hi, Alma. Oh, Deanna Witkowski. I attended Janice's camp in 91 or 92. I don't remember either. Alexis. Oh my gosh, my roommate in college, Mary Catherine Sever. I didn't know she was your roommate. Talked endlessly about your camp. Mary Catherine was one of my favorite students ever. Okay. Deanna, who else? Rebecca Carroll. Hi. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, it's great to hear from all of you. Anybody have any questions? I know we're almost at the end. No? Okay. Well, may I just say again, this has been a ball being here. It made me think a lot about my life and what I do and why I do it. And was actually very, very good for me to prepare for this today. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I guess I will say goodbye. Thank you very much to Gail once again for having me on. And everybody take care of yourselves. And always swing.